What was the Roman Empire? Founded in 753 BC by brothers Romulus and Remus, Rome is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. With a rich and tumultuous history, Rome has been the site of some of the most significant events in human history. A center of power and influence for centuries, Rome was the world's largest city during the Roman Empire at its height. The Roman Republic preceded the Roman Empire. The Roman Republic was a period in which a group of elected officials governed Rome called the Senate. The Republic began in 509 BC when the Roman king was overthrown and lasted until 27 BC when Augustus took power. The Roman Empire was a political and military superpower that ruled most of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East for centuries. The empire was primarily a land-based empire with a strong military tradition. The Roman Empire is often considered one of the most successful empires in history. The emperor was the supreme ruler of the empire and was usually a military general who had seized power through force. The emperor was advised by a senate, a group of wealthy landowners, a vestige from the Roman Republic. During the Republic era, the Senate was made up of elected officials who convened to govern. During the early empire, the Senate played a lesser role in the government as simple advisors to the emperor. The Praetorian Guard force was created during the Roman Republic. These elite soldiers were tasked with protecting the generals on the battlefield. During the Roman Empire's Augustan period, the Praetorian Guard was revitalized and remained an emblem of the emperor's might for over 300 years. The Guard's duties continued to protect the emperor but also acted as spies for the emperor. The Praetorian Guard was dismantled by Septimius Severus, who used hand-picked legion members as his bodyguards. As the empire expanded in all directions, policy regarding citizenship changed to aid with peace and subservience in newly acquired lands. The citizenship policy of the Roman Empire was important because it allowed people to become citizens by serving in the Roman army. Julius Caesar granted citizenship to soldiers and aristocrats from colonies, thus rapidly strengthening the empire and its legitimacy to rule in recently conquered lands. The Roman Empire's citizenship policy allowed people to improve their social status and become part of the Roman government. Where was the Roman Empire located? The Roman Empire was one of the largest empires in history. It began as a small city-state in central Italy and expanded over the centuries to include most of the Mediterranean world. At its height, the Roman Empire included the entire Italian peninsula, much of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. The empire was divided into several provinces, each ruled by a governor appointed by the emperor. The provinces were further divided into smaller units, such as cities and towns. The Roman Empire expanded into the west in the late 1st century BC and the early 1st century AD. This expansion was caused by the Roman conquest of Gaul, which Julius Caesar completed in 51 BC. The Roman conquest of Gaul brought the empire into contact with the Celtic peoples of Britain and Ireland, who the Romans also conquered. The Roman Empire also expanded into the east in the late 1st century AD, when Emperor Trajan conquered the Kingdom of Dacia. This expansion affected the Roman Empire, making it more ethnically and culturally diverse. The Roman Empire was dissolved when it was divided in 395 AD by Theodosius I, the last Roman emperor to rule over both the eastern and western halves of the empire. The empire was divided into two territories, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, each with its own emperor. The Western Empire collapsed in the 5th century, while the Eastern Roman Empire continued to exist until the 15th century. The Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, endured until 1453 AD, when it fell to the Ottoman Turks. When did the Roman Empire start and end? The Roman Empire was one of the greatest and most influential civilizations in the world and lasted for over 1,000 years. The extent and length of their reign has made it hard to trace their rise to power and their fall. We've gone ahead and done the research for you so you can learn more about this fascinating part of history which all started in the city of Rome, Italy. There are some things we should clarify, however, before we get started. It's important to realize that the Roman Empire was a period encompassed by ancient Rome. Ancient Rome refers to the very beginning of the city of Rome, founded in the 8th century BC, and its expansion, through to the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. Its different stages and developments have been split into the Roman Kingdom, the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. The start of the Roman Empire. Before the Empire, the Roman Republic existed, governing the land for 500 years. The Republic, first situated in Rome, expanded out to the rest of Italy and then to North Africa and the Mediterranean. It is hard to trace the wars and success the Romans had during the Republic, as historical writing in Rome didn't start until the late 3rd century BC. What we do know, however, is that the Republic's authority soon started to fade due to its incapability to adjust to their expanding power. With the overwhelming difference between the rich and the poor, a new practice took place where the army was paid with gold. This resulted in soldiers no longer fighting for the Republic, but rather for their generals. Julius Caesar, a military leader, took this opportunity and seized control, becoming dictator of Rome that dismantled the government. This is what initiated the beginning of the Roman Empire. Caesar's order to the Senate to make him dictator for life was the last straw, resulting in his assassination in 44 BC. However, the senators' plan were all in vain, as the crumbling Roman Republic finally died along with Caesar, transforming the entire expanse into the Roman Empire. It was Caesar's adopted son Octavian who replaced him as leader of the empire, becoming to be known as Emperor Augustus, igniting a period of peace and authority across Rome and the rest of the empire, Pax Romana. This period also saw the peak of Roman power, controlling the North African coast, Egypt, southern Europe, most of Western Europe, the Balkans, Crimea and much of the Middle East, including Anatolia, Levant and parts of Mesopotamia and Arabia. With the vastness of their reign, scholars have split the Roman Empire into Western and Eastern, making it easier to follow the empire's developments and its collapse. The end of the Roman Empire. The empire is famous worldwide as one of the greatest civilizations in history. But it is also famed for its end, famously named the Fall of Rome. There are many different factors that contributed to its end, all blending together to create the unstable ruling that let Rome crumble. The empire's military, for example, once a domineering army, became a draining factor. Military spending was astronomical, which left little money for anything else in the empire. The loss in battles resulted in more soldiers being hired to maintain control over the land, with more and more money spent. But even with this higher investment, the number of battles lost grew and the control over lands lessened, causing more vulnerability particularly to the Western Empire. Due to military spending, slavery was a key factor in keeping the empire afloat. However, new laws banned slavery, which increased unemployment and decreased the empire's finance even more. The hardships caused people to stir with unrest, and with a new religion being introduced, more and more civilians lost their faith in the emperor, who was once seen as a god, and turned to Christianity instead. The people's fading hope in the emperor led to corruption and political dispute, weakening the empire from within. Emperors were constantly murdered and replaced, with the Senate attempting to gain more control. The success of the Roman Empire largely relied on its military forces, so when the army started to weaken, naturally the empire began to collapse. This is not something that happened overnight, however. With the empire's large expansion, different areas of the empire started to weaken at different times. Their sheer size was a large part of why the Roman Empire collapsed. It simply became too big for its own good, making it hard to govern. It was the Western Roman Empire that fell first, the Eastern Roman Empire only following another 1,000 years later. This was the first time in 800 years that the city of Rome had been sacked, officially ending the Roman Empire and leading to the Dark Ages. 6 Roman emperors that shaped the history of Rome. Many emperors led Rome throughout its long history, but only a few left a profound mark, shaping the empire's course. 1. Augustus, first of the Roman emperors. When Gaius Octavian was born in 63 BCE, few could have predicted this boy would become ruler of Rome, reshaping its history and laying the foundations of a world superpower. Octavian emerged on Rome's political stage following the assassination of his uncle Julius Caesar. In his will, Caesar adopted the boy, making him his heir. The civil wars that followed Caesar's death ended in 30 BCE when Octavian eliminated Mark Antony and Cleopatra. He was now in control of the wealth of Egypt and the entirety of the Mediterranean. Most importantly, Octavian was the sole ruler of the Roman Republic. The ruins of the Republic would soon transform into something greater. With the help of his loyal friend, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, Octavian convinced the Senate to give him unprecedented power. From 27 BCE until his death in 14 CE, Octavian, now known as Augustus, seized control of the government and the army. He was a principal source of law, controlling state finances, foreign policy, and religion. Augustus also had monopoly over the legions. The Roman military was now a standing army, with regular salaries and pensions. To avoid further civil wars and curb the political ambitions of military commanders, Augustus transferred the legions to the frontier. To protect himself, he established the Praetorian Guard. 2. Vespasian, a Roman emperor by law. The Julio-Claudian dynasty met a bloody end with the violent death of Emperor Nero. His death was the end of one illustrious bloodline and the beginning of a period of chaos that plunged the empire into a bloody civil war, also known as the Year of the Four Emperors. After 3 of these Roman emperors died, one man emerged victorious. In 70 CE, at the head of his legions, Titus Flavius Vespasian arrived in Rome and proclaimed himself emperor. Vespasian had strong military support, always a good thing in Rome, but he could not lay claim to the dynasty, having no blood relation. To resolve the issue, a law was passed before his arrival to Rome, conferring imperial powers on him, which allowed Vespasian to take the diadem and establish his own Flavian dynasty of Roman emperors. Vespasian began a propaganda campaign to further legitimize his rule, distributing coinage across the empire, praising the emperor's restoration of peace, and strengthening the legions. The emperor also stabilized finances, paying particular attention to the provinces. While in Rome, he reshaped the city's skyline with monumental structures like the Colosseum. 3. Hadrian, establishing the empire's frontier. During the reign of Emperor Trajan, one of the most powerful Roman emperors, the Roman Empire reached its greatest extent. His achievements were recorded in stone, in monuments erected across the empire, including the famous Trajan's Column. One of the men who followed Trajan on his campaigns was Publius Aelius Hadrianus or Hadrian. Marked as Trajan's successor, Hadrian took the throne in 117 CE. His reign was marked by a period of peace and consolidation. The only exception was a revolt in Judea in 132 CE. Hadrian was fond of Hellenistic culture. He was also a traveler, who spent most of his reign roaming all over the vast empire. Hadrian looked after the imperial army, and subsequently the soldiers adored their commander-in-chief. Thus, it is not surprising that the emperor who personally inspected the entire length of the border also established the empire's frontiers. Halting expansion, Hadrian focused on strengthening his defenses. On the Rhine and Danube, palisade walls, watchtowers, and forts defined Roman-controlled territory. Hadrian's most famous work still stands in northern England, a stone wall spanning from coast to coast, bearing the emperor's name. Unlike his predecessors who pushed the empire's borders forward, Hadrian knew when to stop. His defensive work separated the Roman territory from the Barbaricum, and solidified the image of the empire and its borders, which, apart from a few minor adjustments, Hadrian's successors continued to keep in place. 4. Marcus Aurelius, an all-inclusive Roman emperor. Unlike the violent collapse of the Julio-Claudians, the power transfer between the next two successor dynasties was smooth and peaceful. Hadrian chose Marcus Aurelius, still a child, to be his successor. Thus, Hadrian's successor, Emperor Antoninus Pius, groomed Aurelius for his future role. The training served Marcus Aurelius well. Upon his succession in 161 CE, the new emperor had to deal with several crises on the empire's frontiers. Rome's eternal nemesis, Persia, threatened the eastern front, while the breakdown of the Danubian lines exposed the imperial heartland of Italy to barbarian attack. Initially, Marcus Aurelius had the support of his co-ruler, Lucius Verus. But after Verus' death from the plague, the emperor had to deal with the crises alone. Marcus Aurelius spent the rest of his reign on the Danube, where he died in 180 CE. Perhaps due to the emperor's constant involvement in warfare and the need for efficient crisis management. Marcus Aurelius began promoting both army officers and civilian administrators on the basis of merit and ability, rather than birth and class. The process started under Hadrian but intensified under Aurelius. To avoid displeasing the Senate, the promoted men would be elevated in their rank too. The consequence of this policy was greater social mobility. More importantly, Aurelius' reforms broadened the base for army recruitment, which allowed for greater flexibility in the future. 5. Septimius Severus, militarizing and sacralizing the imperial family. The assassination of Commodus in 192 CE brought the Antonine dynasty to an end. What followed was a bloody civil war. Eventually, Lucius Septimius Severus, a North African aristocrat and general, emerged as the victor, taking the throne in 197 CE. Severus tolerated the Senate but made it clear that the army was the basis of his power. A generous salary rise, the first in more than a century, further solidified the army's support. More importantly, it tied the military not only to Severus but to his children and the emerging Severan dynasty. But Severus did not stop there. Besides the militarization of the new dynasty, he also made the first moves to detach the imperial household from the populace. Severus made himself and his family sacrosanct, setting a precedent that would become a 4th century trend. Inscriptions and monuments presented the Domus Divina, the imperial family, as a sacrosanct and unassailable entity. Severus's reforms, however, failed to protect his dynasty. The soldiers were powerful backers, but only for Roman emperors who proved to be competent commanders. The violent death of the last Severan emperor, Severus Alexander, at the hands of his own troops, kick-started a chaotic period, which required a military man on the throne, who more often than not lost his life in internal or external conflicts. The empire, however, endured, and when Diocletian took the reins at the end of the 3rd century, he established an autocratic and absolutist rule, the Dominate, following Severus's model. 6. Constantine the Great, first of the Christian Roman emperors. Diocletian's solution for the empire's stability was the Tetrarchy, a system that allowed for the rule of 4 Roman emperors, 2 senior Augusti and 2 junior Caesares. The plan was to satisfy the powerful generals' political ambitions by allowing each of them to rule over a quarter of the Roman world. Unsurprisingly, the system backfired not long after Diocletian's voluntary abdication. Instead of bringing cohesion and peace to the empire, it created new rivalries, sparking further civil wars. The winner of those wars would make one of the most crucial changes to the imperial system, and he would change the course of the empire for centuries to come. Flavius Valerius Constantinus, or Constantine the Great, was the son of one of the tetrarchs. Upon his father's death, Constantine was proclaimed emperor by his soldiers, plunging headfirst into the 2-decade-long civil war. In 312 CE, Constantine's troops defeated one of his rivals, Maxentius, at the Battle of Milvian Bridge outside Rome. According to a popular legend, prior to the battle, Constantine saw a cross in the sky and was told, "In this sign shall you conquer."